And so with a glass of milk, you have a very interesting situation where many people don't even realize why cows produce milk, which is ridiculous, right?
Yeah.
But I never thought about it.
Yeah.
I just thought that a cow ate grass and out came milk. It's just, it seems so naive because, of course, it is. I mean, cows are mammals, so they produce milk to feed their child, as mammals do. And so a farmer will artificially inseminate or forcibly impregnate these animals. So they acquire semen from a bull. This is conventional. This is how it happens across the board. Even small, organic, local, family-owned farms. It's not just big industrial factory farms. So the farm will acquire semen from a bull. We can all use our imaginations to know what that looks like. So they acquire the semen from the bull. They'll put the semen on ice. Then they'll find the female cow who's she's fertile. So then the farmer will place his arm inside the cow's anus, and he'll hold the cervix through the lining of the anus and then forcibly impregnate her by putting the semen through the vagina into the cervix. The cow's gestation is about 9 months. So then once she's given birth, the farmer will take the baby away from the mother because, the baby will drink the first lot of milk. It's got colostrum full of antibodies, very important for a calf's well-being. But then once they've had the colostrum and the first feed, the calf's often taken away within the first 24 hours because the more milk the calf drinks, the less milk the farmer can sell. And so the calf will then be put in something called a solitary confinement hutch, which is a tiny hutch with a little bit of a fenced-off area, maybe 2 feet or so long. And they'll be in there for up to 8 weeks. That's legally speaking, sometimes longer if the farms break the law, which sometimes they do. The females will then be integrated into kind of like bigger pens where they'll then be put into the herd, where they'll be forcibly impregnated on a continuous cycle. The males will either be killed. 90,000 male dairy calves are shot soon after birth in this country because they're useless. We don't really consume veal here. So it's a bit of a useless byproduct. So they'll either be sold on for beef, but they're often the wrong breed, so they won't be profitable enough for a farmer. So 90,000 are shot. Sometimes they're exported to Europe for veal, and sometimes they're sold on for beef. And then all the female dairy cows will eventually be taken to a slaughterhouse. And so this is the kind of the hypocrisy of a vegetarian diet or vegetarianism as a philosophical or even just as a way of life is, people do it because they're against animals being slaughtered, but they don't realize that dairy and eggs as well, animals are still slaughtered in the exact same way, but they suffer for years. Cattle for beef, 18, 24 months, a dairy cow, 5-6 years, So we have a whole process of the same problem, but actually exemplified because the suffering is endured for longer. It requires periods of intense confinement. Even animals that we see roaming. When I got the train here today, big field full of dairy cows roaming, and you think, wow, how beautiful. But that's fine during summer. But you've got 8 months of the year where they're locked inside. You've got all these issues that we don't know about, and so there's a whole process at play that we just don't consider and we don't think about because we're not told. And what I find infuriating is the fact that these industries are so reluctant to show people and tell people the truth because they know that a lot of people will find it probably morally abhorrent. So there's this complete denial of actually showing people the truth because then it can have a huge shift or can create a huge shift in people's perceptions. And so as consumers, we're fed this tiny myopic kind of view of what actually happens on these farms. You go into Tesco's and they've got these big banners supporting local, organic, happy cows produce happy milk. What does that even mean? A cow doesn't have to be happy to produce milk. You can beat a cow in so many ways and they're still going to produce milk. And there's this idea that, of course, farmers love these animals and they have, they'll do the best for these animals because, well, they need them to produce the product. But apart from giving them enough food and somewhere to sleep and making sure they're not being killed off unnecessarily for a farmer unnecessarily at the beginning, well, there's a whole range of things you can do to animals. And so tail docking, disbudding, mutilations, taking away babies, forced impregnations, all of this happens in these industries in this country and around the world, and we're just not told about it. And so I just find it frustrating that we live in the darkness about all of this stuff, and when we shouldn't. We actually have, we should be granted at least enough consideration to be able to make these decisions ourselves given the full spectrum of the truth.
Yeah, and look, let's contextualize this. This isn't like, it sounds like you're describing some awful war practice or some kind of, this isn't for any other purpose. All of this that you're talking about, all of it, people listening should just really, really let that sink in, let the process sink in. And now just think about the telos, think about the end. What do we end up with? A glass of milk, which you drink in less than a minute and go, that was quite nice, maybe. You're not going to remember it tomorrow.